The three appraisers passed the section of emerald green beast bone along the long table, each taking a look. All of them wore puzzled expressions, as though none of them could reach a verdict for the moment. How many Immortal Origin Stones does your Excellency intend to pawn this for? After exchanging glances, the white-haired elder raised his head and asked the burly man in the blue robe. 30,000 Immortal Origin Stones, the blue-robed man shouted. The moment those words fell, a buzzing uproar spread through the hall. 30,000 Immortal Origin Stones was no small sum. The price was higher than most of the treasures sold at today's auction, and even slightly above the current bid for the Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Art now being contested on the stage. This fellow Taoist, the middle-aged scholar said unhurriedly, although this beast bone of yours is indeed rather unusual in material, it bears not the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power. May I ask what is so special about it that you would demand 30,000 Immortal Origin Stones? Well, the blue-robed man hesitated, his face flushing slightly, but he still answered loudly, I obtained this beast bone from a savage ruin at the cost of narrowly escaping death. Though it gives off no aura, neither lightning nor fire can damage it, and even sharp immortal treasures cannot leave so much as a scratch on it. I also asked several master artificers to appraise it, hoping to forge it into an immortal artifact, but none of them could do anything with it either. So this bone must be a priceless treasure. At those words, a trace of mockery flickered through the middle-aged scholar's eyes as he exchanged looks with the other two. Having worked as an appraiser for many years, he had seen far too many shallow people who found something a little unusual and immediately assumed it was an unparalleled treasure. In that case, it seems even you cannot explain this item's true value. My apologies, but in order to ensure absolute fairness in this auction, we only accept items of clearly established worth as collateral. Please take this beast bone back, the middle-aged scholar said with a smile, shaking his head. That idiot Fei Bin? In one of the private rooms, a look of urgency flashed through Jingyang Shangren's eyes as he muttered a curse under his breath. Han Li watched the scene, his gaze flickering slightly, but he said nothing. You! The blue-robed man's face filled with anger. Now that the appraisers had given their conclusion, mocking looks immediately began to sweep in from all around him, making his expression turn even uglier. He had in fact already sought out appraisers for this beast bone before, and the answers he received had all been the same as the middle-aged scholars. He had hoped that with so many experts gathered here today, offering it at a high price might attract attention, and perhaps someone with discerning eyes would recognize its worth. It now seemed that he had clearly miscalculated. A thread of doubt rose in the blue-robed man's heart as well. Could it be that this thing truly had no value at all? Hold on. I'll take it. I'll give you 30,000 Immortal Origin Stones. A voice suddenly rang out from one of the private rooms. Inside sat a dignified middle-aged man wearing a golden crown. He was a Tai cultivator, and his eyes were fixed tightly on the emerald beast bone, gleaming with sharp light. The hall erupted into an even greater commotion. This time, however, surprise far outweighed the noise, and most eyes turned once again toward the beast bone. The three men behind the long table were all stunned. The blue-robed man was overjoyed, and was just about to nod. Wait! I bid 35,000 Immortal Origin Stones. Another voice rang out. It was Jingyang Shangren. The blue-robed man froze, his mouth hanging half open. 40,000 Immortal Origin Stones. The golden-crowned middle-aged man frowned and called out again in a deep voice. 50,000. Jingyang Shangren immediately raised the price. 60,000. 70,000. The two went back and forth, driving the price of the beast bone to an astonishing level in no time. The hall once again filled with heated discussion. Even the dullest among them could guess by now that the beast bone was certainly no ordinary object. Several wealthy and impatient Tai cultivators could not resist joining the bidding as well. The blue-robed man's face was glowing red with excitement, barely able to contain himself. Behind the long table, the three appraisers from Black Mountain Immortal Palace looked more than a little awkward. Their expressions became more and more colorful as the price of the very emerald bone they had judged worthless continued to climb. Even the auctioneer, who had previously been calm and composed, now stood there dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, The price of the green beast bone had soared to the terrifying sum of 200,000 Immortal Origin Stones. The Tai cultivators who had joined midway gradually withdrew one after another, until only the golden-crowned middle-aged man and Jingyang Shangren remained. 220,000. Jingyang Shangren ground out through clenched teeth. 250,000. The golden-crowned man seemed to have seen through Jingyang Shangren's financial limit. With a cold laugh he made his bid. 260,000. Jingyang Shangren's face darkened as he spoke again. 270,000. The golden-crowned man now looked slightly surprised, but he still raised the price. 280,000. Jingyang Shangren followed immediately. 300,000. The golden-crowned man's face had also begun to look strained, as though he too had reached his limit. 350,000. Strange light flickered in Jingyang Shangren's eyes as he spoke in a deep voice. At this, everyone present sucked in a sharp breath. 350,000 Immortal Origin Stones? Does your excellency truly possess such wealth? If you can actually produce that many Immortal Origin Stones, or valuables of equal worth right here in public, I will immediately withdraw from the contest. But if you cannot, then you are deliberately causing trouble, and I hope fellow Taoist Fu will deal with the matter impartially. The golden-crowned middle-aged man turned to look at Fu Yuhai below the stage and said coldly. Jingyang Shangren's eyes darkened, but his face remained calm. Fu Yuhai turned to look at Jingyang Shangren, frowned slightly, then immediately regained his composure and stepped onto the auction platform. Of course, the rules of the auction cannot be broken by anyone. Excellent. Then let this fellow Taoist produce the Immortal Origin Stones in public, the golden-crowned man said with a cold laugh, his pupils narrowing to needlepoints as he stared at Jingyang Shangren. Han Li glanced at Jingyang Shangren, his eyes flickering. Others might not be able to tell, but seated beside him, he could clearly sense Jingyang Shangren's unease. Jingyang Shangren probably truly did not have that many Immortal Origin Stones on him. To pile up such a quantity of Immortal Origin Stones here would be absurd. After the auction ends, I will naturally settle things with this blue-robed fellow Taoist. There is no need for you to concern yourself, Jingyang Shangren snorted. This blue-robed fellow Taoist's item is not one of the auction lots. There is no need to wait until the end of the auction. If you truly have such wealth, then it is already exposed anyway. Why be afraid of letting everyone see it? The way you keep dodging the matter only makes it seem you have a guilty conscience, the golden-crowned man said with repeated sneers. Very well. Since you insist, then take a good look. A flash passed through Jingyang Shangren's eyes, and with a faint laugh he stood up and waved his hand. A stream of white light shot out, carrying more than a dozen items which landed on the appraisal table. Most of them were materials. There were also 2 immortal artifacts and a bottle of pills. Every single item radiated frightening spiritual fluctuations. The 3 of you may first appraise how many Immortal Origin Stones these are worth, Jingyang Shangren said. The middle-aged scholar and the other 2 exchanged a glance and immediately began to appraise the items with great care. Seeing this, the golden-crowned middle-aged man frowned. Fellow Taoist Li, do you happen to have some spare Immortal Origin Stones on you? I would like to borrow some. Jingyang Shangren's voice suddenly sounded in Han Li's mind. How much do you want to borrow? Han Li asked calmly through voice transmission. 80,000 Immortal Origin Stones, Jingyang Shangren replied at once. 80,000 Immortal Origin Stones is no small number, Han Li transmitted back after a brief silence. I know that. But please rest assured, fellow Taoist Li. Give me 10 years, and I will repay every stone in full. Seeing that Han Li had not refused outright, Jingyang Shangren was overjoyed and spoke immediately. For fellow Taoist Jingyang to stake his entire fortune in order to obtain that emerald beast bone, it seems this thing truly is a treasure. I also examined it carefully with my spiritual sense, yet found nothing special about it. Might I ask what sort of rare treasure it is? Han Li asked. To be honest, it is a spatial treasure. It is merely concealed by an extremely profound restriction, which is why you could not detect its origin, Jingyang Shangren replied after a slight hesitation. A spatial treasure? Han Li's brows lifted. How about this? So long as fellow Taoist Li lends me those 80,000 Immortal Origin Stones, no matter how many things are inside it, I am willing to give you 1/3, Jingyang Shangren added. Since fellow Taoist Jingyang has put it that way, if I still refuse, I would be too poor a friend. But when you open this item, I would like to stand by and watch. I hope you will not take offense, Hanli said with a faint smile. Very well. But when the time comes, what you see must not be spread to others, Jingyang Shangren said, his expression changing slightly. After a moment's hesitation, he still nodded in agreement. Hanli immediately agreed through voice transmission, then took out a small storage ring and quietly slipped it into Jingyang Shangren's hand. Jingyang Shangren sent his spiritual sense inside it, and a trace of delight flashed through his eyes. His expression became completely calm. The three appraisers quickly finished their appraisal and announced, after discussion and joint assessment by the three of us, these treasures are worth no less than 120,000 Immortal Origin Stones. Jingyang Shangren waved his hand again, and 2 streaks of light, one black and one white, fell before the three appraisers. They were 2 storage rings. The remaining Immortal Origin Stones are inside, he said lightly. The three appraisers took the rings and checked them briefly, then announced loudly, one storage artifact contains 80,000 Immortal Origin Stones, the other contains 150,000. Together with these materials, the total value is 350,000 Immortal Origin Stones. If you are still not satisfied, fellow Taoist, you may personally inspect these 2 storage rings, Jingyang Shangren said with a slanted glance at the golden-crowned middle-aged man and a sneering chuckle. The golden-crowned man's face was ugly. He snorted and turned his head away. Seeing this, the auctioneer on the stage announced the ownership of the Emerald Beast Bone, bringing this sudden auction to an end. The Emerald Beast Bone, which had been sold for 350,000 Immortal Origin Stones, was soon delivered into Jingyang Shangren's hands by a beautiful female cultivator. Jingyang Shangren gripped the bone so tightly that the joints of his fingers turned faintly white. His gaze repeatedly swept over it, as though examining some peerless treasure. As if realizing that Hanli was beside him, his expression quickly returned to normal. After smiling at Hanli, he carefully put the Emerald Beast Bone away. At the same time, the Immortal Origin Stones and valuable materials he had paid were delivered to the blue-robed man. The Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Art, I bid 23,000 Immortal Origin Stones. The blue-robed man laughed heartily, immensely pleased with himself. He cast a somewhat contemptuous glance at the three appraisers, then shouted the bid. Seeing the situation, the Taoist with the feathered crown made no further offer. In the end, the Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Art was won by the blue-robed man at a price of full 20,000 Immortal Origin Stones above the opening bid. The auction continued. Under the auctioneer's direction, the remaining 2 major treasures were brought up one after another. One was a scroll capable of summoning Tao soldiers, and the other a golden axe of no low grade. Both were naturally highly valuable. Yet because of the shocking sale of the Emerald Beast Bone that had appeared out of nowhere, these last 2 auctions proceeded without much heat, and both ultimately sold for prices that were not particularly high. With a final rousing speech from the auctioneer, the auction came to a rather hasty close. By then, however, the 3 appraisers had already vanished without a trace. Jingyang Shangren and Hanli had each obtained what they wanted, so they immediately rose and headed toward the exit of the hall. The rest of the crowd also began filing out. Those who had gotten what they wanted, like Jingyang Shangren and Hanli, naturally wore delighted expressions. Those who had failed to do so were not too discouraged either. Good things were hard to come by to begin with, and the process of searching and seeking was itself a kind of pleasure. If treasures were obtained too easily, something would be lost. Besides, this celebration had only just begun. For quite some time yet, countless auctions and trade fairs, large and small, would continue throughout the city. Sometimes those occasions offered even better chances of obtaining what one wanted. One could also meet old friends not seen for several thousand years, which was another thing worth anticipating in the dull course of cultivation. Among the stream of people around them, many were excitedly discussing the items that had appeared at the auction. The one most frequently mentioned was naturally the beast bone that Jingyang Shangren had bought for 350,000 Immortal Origin Stones. As a result, Jingyang Shangren became the center of much attention, and people occasionally came over to exchange pleasantries, probing indirectly for the origin of the item. As Vice Mountain Lord of 100 Creations Mountain, Jingyang Shangren had seen such occasions many times before. But now his heart was racing to return as quickly as possible, so where would he have the patience to waste words with them? If he encountered acquaintances or people of considerable status, he would still put on a genial face and make a few perfunctory remarks. As for everyone else, he ignored them outright. The others, seeing this, tactfully refrained from crowding around him any further. Because of Jingyang Shangren's dramatic display, Han Li, who had also attracted a little attention at the auction, was now largely ignored. Han Li was quite happy with that. Smiling faintly, he followed behind Jingyang Shangren and strolled toward the exit. At that moment, a man in black robes walked past Han Li's side. It was the black-robed cultivator who had competed with him twice in the bidding earlier. Previously, the man had been hidden entirely inside his black robe, and his face had not been visible. Now that he was closer, Han Li swept his eyes over him and finally saw his appearance clearly. He was a thin young man, rather handsome, though his complexion carried an unhealthy pallor. As Han Li looked over, the black-robed youth happened to glance back as well. His sharp, knife-like brows lifted slightly, and then he smiled and nodded to Han Li before quickly heading outside. Behind him followed a cultivator in purple robes, who appeared to be his companion. This person had smooth purple-gold hair draped over the shoulders, skin as white as jade, and features of exceptional delicacy. It was impossible to tell whether the person was male or female. The purple-robed cultivator also glanced at Han Li, but the delicate face remained expressionless. The gaze was withdrawn at once, and the person followed the black-robed youth outside. Han Li, however, stopped walking and frowned slightly as he watched the two retreating figures. "Fellow Taoist Li, what is it? Did you see someone you know?" Jingyang Shangren asked. His mind was entirely occupied with thoughts of the emerald beast bone, and he had not noticed the two men. Seeing Han Li suddenly stop, he could not help asking. "It's nothing. My eyes deceived me," Han Li said, shaking his head. "If that's the case, then hurry along." Jingyang Shangren seemed somewhat impatient. Han Li nodded, and the two of them soon left the auction hall. "Come with me," Jingyang Shangren quietly said to Han Li, then turned and headed in another direction. Yet at that very moment, a sudden change erupted. A flash of red light appeared in the air, and a cloud of crimson mist materialized out of nowhere, spinning rapidly with a humming sound. At the same time, lines of scarlet spiritual patterns emerged across the ground, forming a red array that echoed the crimson cloud above. Han Li and the others who had attended the auction had only just moved a short distance away from Yukuan Tower, when they suddenly felt their bodies tighten. Every one of them was enveloped by the light of the scarlet formation on the ground, and not a single person escaped. An enormous force surged out of the formation, instantly imprisoning everyone present and rendering them unable to move. "What is this? It's a trapping formation. Who dares make trouble in the inner city?" The crowd was shocked and immediately began shouting in anger. "Fellow Taoist Jingyang, what is going on?" Han Li asked in a low voice. "I'm not sure either. But anyone bold enough to act in Jukuan's inner city would not do so without purpose." "Let's wait and see," Jingyang Shangren replied, his brows slightly furrowed, though his expression remained calm. Han Li said nothing further, but thoughts raced through his mind. He could feel the extraordinary nature of the scarlet formation around them. It was an extremely powerful binding formation, and it seemed to contain a not insignificant power of laws as well. Yet he had not sensed the slightest omen of it beforehand. Still, as Jingyang Shangren had said, this was the great northern city of the Black Mountain Immortal Region, with Celestial Inspector envoys stationed here. Who would dare so openly set up a formation to imprison people here, especially people qualified to attend such an auction? Could it be? Just as Han Li seemed to realize something, two figures, one red and one green, descended from the sky. Han Li's pupils contracted. He ceased circulating his cultivation art and looked toward the newcomers. Both wore golden armor, exactly the same style as that worn by the Heavenly Court inspectors Han Li had seen before while traveling through the city. The one in front was a burly man with red hair. Crimson flames rolled over the surface of his body, releasing an overwhelmingly powerful aura that made the nearby void distort slightly. Han Li looked at the man and was inwardly alarmed. That terrifying aura had already reached the Tai realm, and even exceeded Gong Shujio's. This man was probably a high-level cultivator in the mid-Tai stage. In his hand, the red-haired giant held a massive crimson sword taller than a man. The blade was covered in scarlet scales and curved in shape, resembling a fire worm, with the tail forming the point and the head serving as the hilt. Streams of scarlet light flowed along the giant's sword like blood, giving off a sense of boundless slaughter. It was clearly a ferocious killing sword of extraordinary evil. The other man was tall and gaunt as a bamboo pole, his body shrouded in dazzling green light. He too radiated an aura of immense power, no weaker than that of the red-haired giant. Celestial Inspector Envoys. The moment the two appeared, everyone present recognized their identities from their attire, and all their faces changed. "There is no need for alarm," the red-haired giant said indifferently. "We have come here to arrest a traitor of the Reincarnation Hall. He is hidden among you. Those who are uninvolved need only wait a moment. You will naturally be released shortly." As he spoke, two blade-like beams of sharp light shot from his eyes and swept over the crowd. Han Li's heart immediately skipped a beat. Had he been exposed? Thoughts spun frantically through his mind as he considered countermeasures. At the same time, immortal spiritual power quietly began to gather within him, though not the slightest trace showed on his face. You and you. Come with us for questioning." The red-haired giant pointed at several people in succession. One of them was the black-robed youth from just now. Seeing the people the giant had indicated, Han Li's eyes flickered, and the taut string in his mind loosened slightly. He remembered those people. They were all cultivators who had bid on the myriad souls grass just now. It seemed his intuition had been right. The myriad souls grass that had been inserted into the auction midway had indeed been a trap. After naming several people, the red-haired giant's knife-like gaze continued to move through the crowd. Anyone swept by his eyes felt a sharp sting, as though their eyes had been pricked by needles. Han Li too was looked over, but his expression remained steady and open, without the slightest abnormality. Although he cultivated the spirit refinement art, and the baleful aura around him had grown rich enough to approach that of a gray immortal, he had been taking void origin pills all along. So long as he did not activate the spirit refinement art, and so long as the other side did not use some special detection treasure, he should not be exposed. Sure enough, the giant's gaze merely passed over Han Li without lingering. However, two red-robed cultivators nearby revealed a trace of panic in their eyes, though it vanished in an instant. Even so, that instant was enough for the red-haired giant to notice. "And the two of you as well." He pointed at them again. "Lord Celestial Inspector Envoy, we are not people of the Reincarnation Hall. On what grounds are you arresting us?" One of the red-robed cultivators could not help shouting. The red-haired giant ignored him. His gaze continued to patrol the crowd, and he pointed out several more people. "That is enough. Those who have been named will come back with us. The rest may leave." The red-haired giant formed a seal and waved his hand. The red formation around Han Li and the others flashed and disappeared, and with it the tremendous restraining power faded away. Relieved of their imprisonment, the others let out breaths of relief and hurriedly departed. "We should go too," Jingyang Shangren said in a low voice, seeing that he had not been named either. The two turned and left, quickly moving away from the area around Yukuan Tower. By now, many people had already gathered along the outskirts of the district around Yukuan Tower, staring from afar in the direction of the tower with the look of those eager to watch a spectacle. When they reached the edge, Han Li and Jingyang Shangren blended into the crowd. Although Jingyang Shangren wanted to leave at once, Han Li expressed a desire to stay and see what happened. Jingyang Shangren was unwilling, but having only just borrowed Immortal Origin Stones from Han Li not long ago, he felt too embarrassed to deny him. He could only grumble inwardly a few times. So the two of them remained among the mass of onlookers and watched the drama unfold. On the open ground before Yukuan Tower, which had previously been packed with people, most had scattered at the red-haired giant's command, leaving behind only a little over 10. These were naturally the ones the giant had singled out earlier, most of whom had taken part in bidding for the myriad souls grass. For some reason, the blue-robed man who had sold the beast bone for 350,000 Immortal Origin Stones was also among them, his face ashen. Aside from them, the purple-robed cultivator who had been following the black-robed youth had not been named, yet had not left either. From the crowd of onlookers more than 10 li away, Han Li saw this and his pupils narrowed slightly. Get on. The red-haired giant did not spare those people another glance. He suddenly waved a hand, and with a flash of green light, a white jade flying boat materialized out of nowhere and landed on the ground. On the flying boat was a scarlet light cage that spun in circles, with arcs of red lightning leaping over it in a way that made the heart tremble. Standing among the distant crowd, Han Li's eyes suddenly flashed with surprise. Earlier he had already found the red-haired giant somewhat familiar. Now that he looked more carefully, he realized the outline of the man's features actually bore a faint resemblance to Gong Shujiu's. There was likely some blood relation between the two. Humph. You Celestial Inspector envoys are far too overbearing. We came here to attend the Yukuan Tower auction, not because we know anything about some traitor from the reincarnation hall. If you want to arrest people, then go arrest them. As for me, I refuse to accompany you. Among the dozen or so people, an old man in a blue Taoist robe with a bristling beard let out a cold snort. Blue light burst from his body as he no longer concealed the peak late golden immortal aura about him. A wave of frigid cold erupted and swept outward, causing the nearby void to stiffen and ripple with layer upon layer of visible blue rings, as though it were about to freeze solid. As those blue ripples washed over the red formation light, its glow immediately dimmed sharply. The old man gave a great shout, and the blue light around him surged again, transforming into circles of rippling blue radiance carrying the power of an icy law. Within a radius of over 10 zhang around him, everything turned into a hazy blue field. With a muffled bang, the old man broke free from the red formation's restraints and shot into the sky. The whole thing happened in a flash. The surrounding spectators saw only a burst of blue light before the old man had already unleashed his law domain and escaped. And who said you could leave? The red-haired giant had barely finished speaking when a savage baleful aura, almost tangible in substance, surged into the heavens from his body. The fire double-armed giant sword in his hand blazed brightly as he slashed through the void. The space above the old man's head exploded with a thunderous boom, and a gigantic phantom of a fire double-arm flashed into existence. An appalling wave of blistering power mixed with dense murderous aura erupted from the fire double-arm and pounced down at the old man, instantly locking him in place with a terrifying law fluctuation of heat. The blue domain within a radius of over 10 zhang around the old man trembled violently. Though his speed was great, the fire double-arm phantom clung to him like a shadow and moved even faster. In desperation, the old man opened his mouth and spat. A dazzling blue light shot out, a blue spear immortal artifact. After its radiance flared, it transformed into a blue streak of light and shot toward the fire double-arm phantom. The fire double-arm opened its enormous mouth and spewed out a mass of scarlet flame. It instantly expanded, turning into a cloud of fire the size of a house. With a thunderous crash, the fire cloud and the blue streak collided and exploded. The scarlet fire cloud then swelled violently again, swallowing the blue spear whole, before rolling back with astonishing speed and striking the bearded old man. A deafening explosion rang out. The old man was swallowed by a mass of dazzling red light, from within which came a furious scream. The fire double-arm phantom shot down from the sky and vanished into the red radiance in a flash. A bursting sound came from within the red light, and the scream cut off abruptly. The red light flickered several times across the sky, then quickly drifted apart. But the bearded old man had vanished completely, as though he had never existed at all. Seeing this, the remaining people all drew in cold breaths. "Don't make me repeat myself," the red-haired giant said coldly. The bodies of those people trembled. How could they dare say another word? They hurried onto the green flying boat and stepped into the scarlet light cage. The distant crowd, having witnessed the clash, also erupted into an uproar, all wearing shocked expressions. Han Li narrowed his eyes. The red-haired giant's strength was clearly even greater than he had anticipated. But then his gaze shifted and fell upon two others. They were the thin black-robed youth and the purple-robed cultivator beside him. Neither of them had boarded the flying boat with the rest. A cold gleam flickered in the red-haired giant's eyes as he looked at the two. "My apologies. Although I am deeply interested in all kinds of flying treasures, I happen to dislike riding in prison carts above all else, the black-robed youth said with not the slightest trace of tension, smiling with complete indifference. The red-haired giant and the bamboo pole man exchanged a glance. The next instant, the bamboo pole man blurred and appeared out of nowhere behind the black-robed youth. You are the one who bid on the myriad souls grass, aren't you? Reincarnation Hall. Fox 3, the red-haired giant said slowly. Fox 3? Are you talking about me? The black-robed youth spread his hands and laughed. I think you've got the wrong person. Though I must say it's a pretty good name. I like it. Fox 3, or should I say Silver Fox. Ever since you infiltrated Heavenly Vast Immortal Palace 100,000 years ago, and stole its secret treasure, you have committed a major crime somewhere in the Immortal Realms almost every few hundred years. This time we've finally lured you out. If you know what's good for you, surrender at once. If you hand over that secret treasure from back then, I can at least grant you a quick death. As he spoke, the flames around the red-haired giant gradually brightened. An even vaster scorching aura erupted from him like a volcanic outburst. The ground nearby instantly turned black and cracked apart. The terrifying heat rushed outward, forcing the distant crowd to retreat even farther. So it's the gentleman thief Silver Fox. Jingyang Shangren let out a soft cry and murmured to himself. A trace of surprise also passed over Han Li's face. He had indeed seen the name Silver Fox before on the Execution Immortal platform in the city. According to what was written there, this person belonged to the Reincarnation Hall and specialized in stealing all kinds of rare treasures, most of them connected to immortal palaces throughout the various immortal realms. Before each theft he would even spread word of it in advance, yet he had never once failed. The crimes he had committed were simply too numerous to count. No wonder he had spent money so lavishly before. He was obviously not using his own money, so of course he felt no pain in spending it. Heavenly Vast Immortal Palace had a secret treasure stolen? Oh, I think I may have heard of that. Back then, Palace Master Situ Bowen had found a profound heaven spirit treasure. He had intended to present it to the heavenly court, and even held a grand celebration for it, gathering many golden immortals. There were even several celestial inspector envoys from the heavenly court present. And yet the treasure was stolen the very day before the celebration. TSK, what a pity. How embarrassing that must have been for the palace master and those inspector envoys. But why are you looking for me? That matter has nothing to do with me at all. Or do you plan to seize some random person to take the blame? The black-robed youth smiled as he spoke. Having such a treasured object stolen right under the eyes of so many Tai Jade immortals and golden immortals was already a great humiliation for the heavenly court. For the youth to describe it so vividly in front of everyone naturally stirred another uproar among the surrounding onlookers. Although the crowd dared not openly say anything with the inspector envoys present, occasional snickers still sounded from within. A vein throbbed on the red-haired giant's forehead and murderous intent surged in his eyes, but he did not attack immediately. No matter how glib your tongue is today, you will not leave Jukuin City, the bamboo pole man said coldly, enunciating each word. The red-haired giant let out a cold laugh and stepped forward. The bamboo pole man moved as well, closing in on the black-robed youth and his companion. Two vast pressures spread from their bodies, intertwining and pressing forward. What a nuisance. Why is it that every so often someone always comes to bother me? I just want a few peaceful days. Why is that so difficult? The black-robed youth sighed helplessly. The moment the sigh faded, his body suddenly twisted and transformed into a distorted silver thread, vanishing from where he stood as though into thin air. The surrounding restraining formation seemed completely useless against him. The purple-robed cultivator remained standing there with hands clasped behind the back, gazing up at the sky and paying no attention whatsoever to the events around him, as if everything happening before his eyes had nothing to do with him. You want to run? Dream on! The red-haired giant roared. The flames around him blazed once more and spread outward at incredible speed, instantly forming a scarlet spirit domain 1,000 zhang wide that enveloped several nearby buildings and more than half the auction grounds. Within the scarlet domain, countless seemingly solid flames rolled and churned. Aside from Yukuin Tower, every building within the domain rapidly melted away, dissolving into greenish smoke and vanishing without a trace. Han Li and the others watching from afar retreated farther again. Fortunately, They had already been standing at a great distance and were not caught within the scarlet domain. Yet the next moment, a trace of surprise appeared in the red-haired giant's eyes. After the black-robed youth had vanished, it was as though he had disappeared entirely. Neither the spirit domain nor divine sense could detect him in the slightest. It was as though he had evaporated from the world. At the exact moment the black-robed youth disappeared, the bamboo pole man also raised a hand and formed a seal. A streak of green light shot from his hand and sank into the void. In the next instant, centered on the auction grounds, a huge hazy green light curtain tens of li in size emerged. The curtain was hemispherical, with countless tornado-like green shadows rolling across it and rumbling thunderously. Threads of spatial fluctuation spread from within the green light curtain. It clearly contained spatial restrictions to prevent the black-robed youth from escaping through space-time transmission arts. In order to capture Silver Fox, the two had obviously prepared everything long in advance. Once he had done this, the bamboo pole man also turned his gaze to the surroundings, sensing for traces of the black-robed youth. He suddenly let out a soft sound of surprise. Within the red-haired giant's flame domain, the purple-robed cultivator was still standing there with hands behind the back, without so much as activating any protective technique. Yet whenever the scarlet flames came within 3 feet of his body, they were immediately pushed away by an invisible force. This is... The bamboo pole man's eyes narrowed, and he was just about to investigate further, when suddenly a loud shout rang out. The red-haired giant spun around on the spot, and the giant sword in his hand slashed swiftly behind him. A clear metallic ding rang out as the fire WRM sword blocked a streak of silver sword light. This silver sword light was extremely thin, as light as cicada wings, and emitted a dim, obscure radiance within which faint silver runes could be seen flickering. The red-haired giant sneered. Flames on the giant's sword flared violently, releasing a shocking aura. With a sharp clang, the silver sword light was cut apart on the spot. But at that very moment, the void behind the red-haired giant rippled slightly, and 2 identical streaks of silver sword light appeared out of nowhere, stabbing toward the center of his back with incredible speed. The red-haired giant frowned slightly, but he did not panic. Opening his mouth, he spat out a sheet of crimson light that swept forth and in a blur appeared behind him. The red glow flashed and turned into a round scarlet shield more than 10 feet across. Clang! Clang! 2 streaks of silver sword light struck the shield, sending sparks flying in every direction. The scarlet shield trembled faintly, ripples passing through its surface, but it quickly steadied again. Before the red-haired giant could relax, however, the space to either side of him shifted. For more silver sword lights, identical to the earlier ones, appeared out of thin air and shot toward different parts of his body, even faster than before, like 4 bolts of silver lightning. At last his expression darkened. He gave the massive flaming flood dragon sword in his hand a shake, and the blade suddenly blazed with brilliant light. 4 enormous sword auras of scarlet flame, each as large as a door panel, appeared out of nowhere. Every one of them radiated fluctuations of law power as they flew to meet the 4 silver sword lights. 3 muffled explosions rang out in quick succession. 3 of the silver sword lights were blocked, shattering the moment they collided with the flaming sword auras. But just as the 4th flaming sword aura was about to collide with the last silver sword light, it inexplicably veered to the side. The silver sword light skimmed past it and in a blur, appeared at the red-haired giant's lower abdomen, stabbing down. Among the distant crowd, Han Li's face showed a flicker of surprise. At the instant that flaming sword aura shifted, he vaguely sensed a trace of the chain of divine thought. Just then, a booming sound erupted beside the red-haired giant, and a dazzling burst of azure light appeared out of nowhere, instantly transforming into a green flying shuttle that slammed into the silver sword light. With a dull bang, the silver sword light shattered under the blow and exploded apart. "Brother Gongshu, are you all right?" A flash of green shadow appeared beside the red-haired giant, and the lanky man materialized there. "I'm fine. Many thanks, Brother Wang," the red-haired giant said, sweat breaking out cold across his back. Even as he spoke, he pointed with a hand seal. The flaming flood dragon greatsword shot into the air and hovered above his head. Scarlet sword radiance burst from its surface, splitting into layer upon layer of crimson sword aura that formed a grand sword formation around him, rumbling endlessly as it revolved. At the same time, the scarlet shield behind him brightened sharply and expanded into a thick red barrier that enclosed his entire body, lest another hidden sword strike like the last one. Silver Fox may only be at the early Tai stage, but his strength is not to be underestimated. Otherwise, he would never have eluded capture for so many years. Fellow Taoist Gongshu, you must be careful, the lanky man said. As he spoke, he too waved a hand. A green bamboo slip immortal treasure shot out and transformed into a bamboo slip-shaped curtain of green light that covered his entire body. The red-haired giant nodded and put away the last trace of arrogance in his heart. Gongshu Tian, I heard you were the #1 prodigy of the Gongshu family, famed even within the immortal prison. So this is all you amount to? Needing your companion to save you. How disappointing. A mocking voice echoed through the nearby void, impossible to place. It was the black-robed youth's voice. Anger flashed across Gongshu Tian's face, but he drew a deep breath and ignored the provocation. Silver Fox can hide himself completely. Even my spirit domain can't sense him. What kind of law is he cultivating? He transmitted, sweeping his gaze around. I'm not entirely sure either, the lanky man replied by voice transmission. I've heard he possesses a spatial treasure that lets his body merge with the void. Ordinary spirit domains and divine sense can't detect his whereabouts. But it's not without a counter. You mean, that move? Gongshu Tian was taken aback, then immediately understood. A burst of green light flared from the lanky man's body and spread outward, forming a green spirit domain that layered itself atop the surrounding scarlet flame domain. His hand seals changed and countless green whirlwinds sprang up within the green domain, spinning rapidly. Gongshu Tian also began chanting swiftly. The scarlet flame domain blazed brighter, and columns of scarlet fire rose into being, twining together with the green whirlwinds. Rumble! The fire pillars and whirlwinds fused at high speed. The scarlet pillars swelled violently, and the entire scarlet flame domain suddenly shone several times brighter, while the green domain itself remained unchanged. Billowing, dense flames instantly blocked all sight. Those outside could no longer see what was happening within the domain, and even divine sense could not penetrate. Regret spread across the faces of the onlookers. A Tai cultivator could already begin to merge with heaven and earth. Every move in battle, every subtle shift in the power of the laws they wielded, was a precious lesson, not something one had the chance to witness often. A trace of regret also passed through Han Li's eyes, though not because he wanted to watch the battle of laws. In his mind, he saw once more the image of that flaming sword aura suddenly shifting, along with that faint trace of the chain of divine thought, and he sighed inwardly again. He had not seen it clearly just now. If only he could watch it a few more times, he was certain he could grasp the crucial secret. This kind of high-level application of divine thought power, if he could make it his own, would surely produce marvelous effects in future battles. Inside the Scarlet Spirit domain, Gongshu Tian formed a seal with both hands and swept them outward. The scarlet flames in the domain immediately surged and rolled toward the sky, gathering in midair. In the blink of an eye, they formed a gigantic incandescent fireball like a blazing white sun hanging overhead. A terrifying aura of the fire law spread from the white sun, making the nearby void tremble violently. Gongshu Tian's face grew slightly pale. Clearly this technique was a tremendous drain on him. Chanting under his breath, he suddenly grabbed at the air with one hand. The white sun spun rapidly, and amid shrill hissing sounds, countless white threads of light shot from it, piercing through the void below in flashing streaks. The attack covered an enormous area. In an instant, those white threads spread to every corner of the flame domain. Found you! Gongshu Tian's eyes lit up, and his hand seals changed. The countless white threads of light suddenly went taut and jerked hard. Behind and to the left of the two men, the void flickered, and a black figure emerged, none other than the black-robed youth. White threads wrapped around his body, dragging him forcibly out of the void. A hint of surprise flashed across his handsome face. Die! The lanky man shouted, flicking a hand. A streak of green light shot out toward the black-robed youth. It was a green command medallion. With a dull boom, the medallion burst into brilliant green light and transformed into the phantom of a bizarre creature with the body of a tiger and the head of a serpent beast. It opened a blood-red maw and lunged down at the black-robed youth. Even before it reached him, a dreadful pressure descended, enough to make souls scatter in terror. This aura far surpassed the lanky man's own and was almost at the peak of the Tai stage. The black-robed youth's expression sank. His hands flashed into seals, and 2 dazzling bursts of silver flared in his eyes, quickly swallowing his entire body. Bang! His body suddenly exploded into countless motes of silver light that scattered in all directions. Almost at the same moment, the green monster phantom passed through where he had been, striking nothing but air. The green beast gave an unwilling roar, its huge body quickly dispersing before condensing once more into the green command medallion, though the light it gave off had dimmed considerably. Meanwhile, those silver motes rapidly gathered in the distance and fused together again into Silver Fox's form. But his appearance had changed drastically, revealing his true face. His hair had turned silver, his black eyes had become brilliant silver eyes, and his ears had lengthened, now covered in a fine layer of silver fur. Strands of mist-like silver light coiled around him, making him seem hazy and mysterious. The lanky man's face grew serious. He hurriedly recalled the green medallion with a wave, then flung both hands outward. A sheet of crystalline light flew from his sleeves. It was a green ancient mirror. The moment the mirror appeared, a ring of green light rippled across its surface and rapidly expanded until it was as large as a house. Countless green runes poured out of it, and with a thunderous sound they transformed into clusters of green light. The lanky man spat out a ball of green lightning, which wove itself into those light clusters. The clusters instantly changed, becoming broad green wind blades the size of doors, each wrapped in arcs of green lightning. With fierce momentum, they rained towards Silver Fox as fast as lightning. Gong Shu Tian also formed a seal and waved a hand. The white sun flashed, and more white threads of light shot out toward Silver Fox. Silver Fox sneered. A flash of silver radiance passed over him, and he split into dozens of silver figures. Those figures glimmered faintly, half real and half illusion, leaving chains of afterimages as they shot in all directions. The green wind blades tore through them in flashing streaks, but inflicted no damage whatsoever. The white threads were the same, passing through the silver figures without effect. "You two are not bad," Silver Fox's hazy laughter rang out again. "But I've played with you long enough. I still have business to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave. We'll never meet again." Those silver figures suddenly accelerated, dragging long trails of afterimages behind them as they shot outward, as if the 2 surrounding spirit domains had no effect on them at all. "Do not think of escaping," the lanky man bellowed. His body shot forward and, in a blur, appeared atop the green ancient mirror. Pressing both hands downward in a seal, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood, which fused into the mirror. The green ancient mirror immediately blazed with light. Countless streams of green radiance gushed from it as if it were burning. Its whole body became half transparent and then, with a flash, fused into the green spirit domain. The entire domain brightened abruptly, turning into a gigantic mirror surface. Strands of clear green light shone forth from the mirror, releasing a strange fluctuation of law power. The silver figures froze instantly as though confined. The lanky man's hand seals changed again, and he slammed both palms against the mirror. The mirror blazed and countless crystalline green filaments shot from it, piercing the silver figures. Whatever divine ability those filaments were, they finally managed to harm the silver figures. Pierced by innumerable filaments, the silver figures quickly dissipated one after another, until only a single silver figure remained. "Brother Gong Shu now," the lanky man shouted. After this series of spells, his face had turned deathly pale. Even the arms pressed against the mirror were trembling, and it was obvious that supporting this technique was an enormous burden for him. Gong Shu Tian's expression turned solemn. Chanting swiftly, he reached into the air with both hands, then dragged them down. The white sun overhead flared once more, its surface covered with a layer of white fire. With rumbling thunder, it plummeted from the sky and crashed directly onto that lone silver figure. A heaven-shaking explosion erupted. The white sun burst apart in a flash, swallowing the silver figure whole. Blinding white light bloomed in an instant and filled the entire spirit domain. An unfathomable fluctuation of law power spread from the exploding white sun, ravaging the surrounding space without restraint. Cracks split open through the nearby void, as if all of space were about to be torn apart. The green mirror surface shattered and vanished at once, reverting to the green spirit domain. But struck by that terrifying law power, the green spirit domain also broke apart inch by inch and soon collapsed completely. After crushing the green spirit domain, that destructive wave of law power did not slow in the slightest. It continued battering the scarlet flame domain. Gong Tian let out a roar and strained to maintain the flame domain, confining that horrifying explosive force within it and refusing to let it spread. Otherwise, half the inner city of Juquan might well have been destroyed. Several breaths later, the terrifying law power finally began to subside, and the dazzling white light filling the domain quickly faded. By then, Gong Tian's face was as pale as paper, but his eyes shone with joy. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the scarlet flame domain and looked toward where the silver figure had stood. That white sun was a divine ability born from the fusion of his law power and the lanky man's. Though the fusion between their laws was far from perfect, it was still enough to rival a full-powered strike from a late Tai cultivator. Silver Fox was only at the early Tai stage. Having been struck directly by the white sun, there was no chance he could have survived. Hopefully his corpse had not been blown to pieces. Otherwise, without proof, it would be difficult to claim the mission reward. As the dense wall of fire in the spirit domain vanished, the distant spectators broke into a loud buzz of commotion. Even more people had gathered by now, and all eyes turned toward the three within the field. Han Li's eyes brightened, and he stared intently inside. The surrounding white light soon fully dissipated, revealing a charred black body lying face down on the ground. But when Gong Tian's gaze swept over it, the smile on his face froze. The scorched body was tall and thin, with a head of green hair. It was the lanky man. His entire body was blackened as though burnt to a crisp. Cracks covered him, yet little blood flowed from them. He looked like nothing more than a torn sack, though fortunately there was still breath in his mouth and nose. Senior Brother Wang. Gong Tian stood dumbstruck for an instant, then rushed to the man's side. With a flip of his hand, he produced two talismans, one emerald green and one blood red. Both talismans radiated astonishing spiritual power and carried fluctuations of law force. They were clearly no ordinary Dao talismans. At that moment, Gong Tian no longer cared about the cost. Forming a seal, he activated them. The two talismans lit up and transformed into a green light and a blood-colored light that fused into the lanky man's body. The ruined body immediately began changing from black to red. Fine threads of blood quickly appeared at the damaged places, weaving and reconnecting his flesh. The aura around him also swelled, no longer as weak as a guttering flame. Only then did Gong Tian relax. He abruptly turned and looked toward where the lanky man had been standing before. There stood a silver figure. It was Silver Fox. At that moment, his hands were clasped before his chest in a seal, and his eyes shone with blinding silver light that made them impossible to look at directly. Silver Fox suddenly released his hand seal. The silver light in his eyes quickly dimmed, revealing a slightly pale face and a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. The purple-robed cultivator from before still stood calmly in place with his hands behind his back, his clothing spotless as new, not even a speck of dust upon it. The desperate life and death struggle of Silver Fox and the other two had not affected him in the slightest. He turned his head and glanced once in the direction of the three of them, then quickly looked away again. At this sight, the surrounding spectators erupted. From the look of things, Silver Fox had fought two against one and still held the upper hand. The law of illusion, to think it's been cultivated to such a degree, the red-haired giant said, staring at Silver Fox's eyes with shock and fury. Even as he spoke, he picked up the lanky man's body and retreated backward. "Did I say you could leave?" Silver Fox said, coolly lifting one hand. Brilliant silver light gathered at his fingertips, ready to be released. At that very instant, the space above rippled, and a bolt of 5-colored lightning appeared out of nowhere and struck down at Silver Fox's head with unbelievable speed. Silver Fox's face changed. He shot backward at once to evade it, but the lightning was far too fast and gave no warning at all. It was already too late to dodge. The 5-colored lightning twisted like a living thing and wrapped around his raised left arm. With a soft puff, Silver Fox's arm was severed piece by piece and turned to ash. His figure blurred, and in the next moment he appeared 100 yards away. But the five-colored lightning had no intention of letting him go. Like a parasite clinging to bone, it chased after him, winding toward the rest of his body. Silver Fox's expression turned cold. He swept his right arm. A crystalline flash appeared at his brow, and the phantom of a translucent chain flickered past. The five-colored lightning abruptly veered aside, slicing past him and striking the ground instead, disappearing into it. With a hiss, a black hole opened in the earth, and a thin curl of blue smoke rose from it. Han Li's eyes blazed with strange light. This was the second time Silver Fox had used that secret divine thought technique. Silver Fox's body flickered again, retreating another 100 yards or so. Suddenly he spat out a mouthful of blood-colored light onto the stump of his severed arm. Threads of blood immediately appeared there, weaving together at great speed. In the blink of an eye, a brand new arm had formed. He turned his eyes upward toward the sky. There, amid a flash of five-colored lightning, a figure appeared from nowhere and descended slowly. The man was middle-aged and extraordinarily tall, nearly half again the height of an ordinary person. His skin was bronze, his features sharp and angular as if carved from steel, and his gaze was stern and imposing without anger. He wore a suit of golden armor. He too was an Inspector Immortal Envoy. Su Lu. Silver Fox frowned, forcing the name out between clenched teeth. Inspector Su Lu. He's come as well. Jingyang Shangren exclaimed in surprise. Inspector Su Lu? The one you mentioned, the Inspector Immortal Envoy stationed in Juquan City. Han Li asked in a low voice. Exactly. Inspector Su Lu is a great cultivator at the peak of the Tai stage. Silver Fox may be in real danger now, Jingyang Shangren said with a sigh. Silver Fox is a wanted criminal of the Heavenly Court. Fellow Taoist Jingyang, you are the Deputy Mountain Lord of 100 Creations Mountain, and can be considered one of the Heavenly Court side. Yet from your tone it sounds as if you're worried Silver Fox might be caught, Han Li said, his eyes flickering as he lowered his voice. Jingyang Shangren shuddered and hurriedly glanced around. Seeing that everyone nearby was watching Su Lu in the air, and not paying attention to their conversation, he relaxed slightly. Fellow Taoist Li, I was only speaking casually. You must never joke about such things. If the people of the Heavenly Court heard, I'd be in enormous trouble, Jingyang transmitted bitterly. Han Li laughed and replied by transmission. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Jingyang. I already set up a sound isolating restriction nearby. No outsider can hear what we just said. How could I be so careless? Jingyang started, then took a closer look around them. Sure enough, he saw a faint barrier that had sealed the two of them off from the surroundings. He felt relieved but also deeply shocked. The two of them had been standing side by side this whole time, and Han Li had cast the restriction without his noticing in the least. Han Li's strength was likely greater than he had imagined. In the distant field, wariness flickered through Silver Fox's eyes. Then his body suddenly shifted. Silver light flashed nearby, and dozens of half-real, half-illusory silver figures appeared once more, shooting in all directions at tremendous speed. Since you've come, why hurry to leave? Su Lu sneered in midair. His hands moved, and all 10 fingers clawed out at a speed too fast for the eye to follow. The crackle of lightning rang out. Several dozen arcs of five-colored lightning flew from his fingertips and shot after the silver figures. Though the silver figures were already moving at incredible speed, the five-colored arcs were even faster. In a flash they caught up, wrapping around the figures and tearing through them. A force of utmost righteousness and blazing yang law power erupted from the lightning arcs, engulfing the silver figures. With a ripping sound, all the silver figures shattered and drifted away. Only one silver figure remained, Silver Fox's true body fleeing outward. Su Lu smiled faintly in the air, his fingers shifting again. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Those five-colored arcs immediately converged, transforming in the blink of an eye into 4 five-colored lightning dragons, each more than 30 feet long. Their bodies crackled with multicolored lightning and looked utterly terrifying. The 4 lightning dragons swayed their heads and tails, then vanished and reappeared above Silver Fox, crossing and coiling together as they lunged down at him. With a tremendous boom, an unimaginable force burst from the 4 dragons and enveloped Silver Fox. His flying speed suddenly slowed tenfold. His face changed, and he shouted loudly while his hands moved in frantic seals. Brilliant light burst from his brow, and several phantom chains of divine thought flashed out. The 4 diving lightning dragons swayed slightly, revealing a gap. Silver Fox's eyes lit up, and with a flicker of movement he transformed into a streak of silver and shot through. A moment later, a world-shaking explosion erupted. A 5-colored sphere of lightning 100 yards wide appeared, dazzling beyond measure. Thick arcs of 5-colored electricity raced through it. Everything the sphere touched vanished soundlessly into nothingness, like some monstrous beast capable of devouring all things. But at the instant the lightning sphere appeared, a streak of silver shot out from within it. In a flash, Silver Fox's figure emerged. He looked somewhat bedraggled now. His face was paler, his robes were torn, and his arms and body were marked by blackened burns, though none of them were severe. Suddenly he twisted his head and shouted toward the rear. "Hey! I told you not to interfere, but that doesn't mean you should really just stand there and watch." Hearing this, Sulu in the air cast a glance at the purple-robed cultivator standing there as if stunned into stupidity. His expression changed slightly, but his hands did not pause. He formed a seal, and the 5-colored lightning sphere split apart, becoming 4 lightning dragons once again that shot toward Silver Fox. Silver Fox was obviously wary of those 4 dragons. Silver radiance burst from his body as he sped toward the purple-robed cultivator, leaving a long string of afterimages. "Well, since you are the one asking me to intervene, then let bygones be bygones," the purple-robed cultivator said with a smile, speaking for the first time. His voice was rich and magnetic, unmistakably male. Han Li's expression shifted in the distance. The voice sounded vaguely familiar. "Fine," Silver Fox snapped irritably as he halted beside the purple-robed cultivator. The purple-robed man smiled again. Raising both hands, he rubbed them together. Violet light immediately burst from his body, then rolled outward into thick purple radiance that churned around him. A violent wave of demonic energy exploded from the purple glow and surged outward. Han Li's heart stirred. This demonic energy was not only powerful but exceptionally pure, far superior even to the demonic aura released when he used the Brahma sacred true devil art. The purple radiance trembled and then rolled back like a whale drawing in water, gathering behind the purple-robed cultivator and transforming into a towering violet phantom with 3 heads and 6 arms. Each head was different. One bore a single horn and wore a wrathful expression. Another wore a helmet shaped like flames and had both eyes closed as if sleeping. The last had a look of compassion, with a vertical eye on its forehead. Each of the 3 heads also had a long vertical eye on the forehead, all of them shut at the moment. Its 6 arms each held a different weapon: mace, whip, battle axe, and others besides. At that moment the purple-robed cultivator's sleeves flew back, revealing his arms, which were covered in dense violet scales. At this sight Han Li's brows lifted. He finally remembered why that voice had sounded familiar. "So it's him," he murmured. This purple-robed cultivator was most likely Shi Chuankong, the one he had met back in Yuanhuang City. The violet scales on the man's arms now shone brilliantly, and lines of purple light spread from them, quickly covering his entire body. His form swelled several times larger. What had once been a slender frame became tremendously robust, purple demonic patterns appearing across his skin. His eyes turned violet black and sent out 2 beams of purple light. A huge aura spread from him. He had not reached the Tai stage, but he was at the peak of the golden immortal level. With a wave of his hands, 2 streaks of violet light flew out and sank into the Dharma idol behind him. The horned head in the center of the idol suddenly blazed with purple light, becoming solid, and the vertical eye on its forehead snapped open. A beam of silver shot from it, carrying an overwhelmingly powerful fluctuation of spatial law that caused the nearby void to ripple violently. The silver light flashed once and vanished into the void. In the next instant, the space behind Silver Fox flickered. A dazzling silver light appeared out of nowhere and spun rapidly, turning into a silver vortex. The 4 lightning dragons shot toward it. The silver vortex suddenly expanded and swallowed all 4 dragons. A brilliant flash of silver followed, and both the vortex and the dragons vanished. Sulu's expression changed, a trace of shock appearing on his face. But at that very moment, the void behind him flickered, and another silver vortex appeared out of nowhere. 5 colored lightning flared, and the 4 lightning dragons burst out of the vortex, striking Sulu squarely in the back with lightning speed before he could react. Sulu's body shook violently, and he was blasted forward. That spatial transfer of yours is truly formidable. This time Sulu has smashed his own foot with his own stone. Splendid! Silver Fox laughed as he dropped beside the purple-robed cultivator in a flash of silver light. Sulu is not an enemy we can face head-on right now. Go! The purple-robed cultivator was not nearly as talkative as Silver Fox. His hands moved quickly into seals. The 6 arms of the violet Dharma idol closed around both him and Silver Fox. Then with a bang, it turned into a mass of dazzling violet light and shot into the distance. "Where do you think you're going?" came a furious shout like a thunderclap. Streams of 5-colored lightning appeared out of nowhere, instantly filling a radius of several hundred yards, and forming a lightning spirit domain that enveloped the violet light containing the 2 of them. This lightning domain was nearly solid, blocking Han Li and the others from seeing inside once more. Within the domain, arcs of 5-colored lightning converged from all directions like whips, lashing fiercely at the violet mass. The violet light fluctuated violently. Wherever the 5-colored arc struck, some of the violet demonic energy was evaporated, and the light mass rapidly shrank. At the center of the lightning domain, Sulu's figure appeared. The armor on his back was damaged, exposing a broad stretch of bronze-colored skin beneath, but he was clearly uninjured. At this moment, perhaps because he had just been struck by his own lightning dragons, Sulu's face was darker than ever. His hands moved in seals, and the 5-colored arcs in the domain immediately converged toward one point. Very soon they formed a gigantic battle axe of lightning. Deep waves of sound rolled from the axe, not the crack of thunder, but resonant tones almost like singing. A pressure so vast it seemed capable of splitting heaven and earth itself radiated from the lightning axe. "Go!" Sulu raised an arm and then chopped downward. The lightning axe turned slowly, but the horrific force it carried tore open the surrounding space as it descended toward the violet light, slow in appearance yet swift in reality. Almost at the same moment, a mighty sword cry rang out. A crimson sword as huge as a mountain came flying in, wrapped in the phantom of a gigantic fire flood dragon and radiating immense fire law power. Though the crimson sword's might was inferior to that of the lightning axe, it was still extraordinary. Wherever it passed, the void was sliced open into a black scar as it too slashed toward the violet light. The sword came from a crimson figure standing not far away. It was Gongshu Tian, taking the chance to strike while his enemy was down. At some point, the lanky man had regained consciousness and was standing beside Gongshu Tian, though severely injured and unable to act. At that very instant, a dazzling silver light suddenly burst forth from within the violet light and spread rapidly, becoming a silver spirit domain. The instant the silver domain took shape, the lightning axe and the crimson giant sword descended with a crash. The silver domain flashed, then abruptly twisted and distorted. The surrounding void within several hundred yards changed with it, stretching and folding without cease. Caught by the distorted spatial force, the lightning axe and crimson sword were thrown off course. They passed by the silver spirit domain at an angle, even colliding with each other and giving rise to an earth-shaking explosion. The silver spirit domain, which had shone so brightly, immediately dimmed as though it had consumed an enormous amount of power. But then it flashed violently once more, lengthening and deforming at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it turned into the shape of a silver shuttle, plunged into the void and vanished. Almost simultaneously, the layer of green light outside shuddered violently, and a cracking sound came from within. With a bang, the huge curtain of light shattered directly into countless motes of green radiance. All of these changes happened in the span of a spark. Sulu and Gongshu Tian saw only silver light flash before their eyes a few times, and then Silver Fox and the purple-robed cultivator were gone. Damn it! Gongshu Tian's face became extremely ugly, and he could not help cursing aloud. The lanky man's expression was no better. Sulu frowned slightly. The anger on his face slowly ebbed, and he formed a seal to disperse the lightning axe. Fellow Taoist Su, your lightning law happens to counter Silver Fox perfectly. If the 3 of us had acted together from the start, Brother Wang would not have been injured. and Silver Fox certainly would not have escaped. Gong Shu Tian said in a deep voice, looking at Su Lu. Are you questioning me? Su Lu turned his gaze on Gong Shu Tian, and a chill aura slowly spread from him. I am not questioning you. I am merely stating the facts. Capturing Silver Fox was the mission assigned to the three of us. Now he has escaped, and he took the myriad souls herb with him. How are we supposed to explain this to our superiors? Gong Shu Tian's expression stiffened, and his tone softened somewhat. Capturing Silver Fox was your mission. The order I received from above was to assist. I have already done what I was supposed to do. As for how you explain matters, that is your concern. These people on the carriage are all honored guests who came to attend the grand ceremony of Jukuin City. You had best think carefully about how to handle them. As he spoke, Su Lu glanced over the devastated inner city, then at the people trapped on the distant flying carriage, and let out a cold laugh. With that, he waved a hand to disperse the lightning spirit domain. Without waiting for Gong Shu Tian to say anything more, his figure blurred and disappeared. As the lightning domain vanished, Gong Shu Tian and the lanky man appeared once again in full view of the crowd. By now, more and more onlookers had gathered, forming what looked like a sea of people. Under so many watching eyes, neither of the two looked pleased. Gong Shu Tian snorted coldly, activated a spell with one hand, and turned into two beams of light that flew into the distance. The nearby flying vessel also became a streak of spiritual light and chased after them, while the people aboard were simply dumped out. As though pardoned from death, they scattered in all directions and vanished in an instant. Seeing that there was no more spectacle to watch, the crowd soon dispersed as well. Judging from the looks on their faces, they didn't catch Silver Fox after all, Hanli said with a faint smile as he watched the two Inspector Immortal envoys flee into the distance. In his mind, the image of Shi Chuankong surfaced, and a sharp light flashed through his eyes. When they had first met, that man had probably been a member of the demon race, the three-headed, six-armed Dharma idol he had used. Hanli had no idea what divine ability it was, but it seemed faintly connected to the Brahma sacred true devil art. And on top of that, the man had actually grasped the law of space. Unfortunately, Su Lu had unfolded the lightning spirit domain just then, and Hanli had not been able to see how the battle developed afterward. Fellow Taoist Li, you've had your fill of excitement. We should be going now. This place has become a land of trouble, Jingyang Shangren urged in a low voice, glancing around. I was just a bit too curious. My apologies for making you wait so long, fellow Taoist Jingyang. Let's go, Hanli said with a laugh. At the heart of Jukuin City stood a white tower, soaring into the clouds like a spear thrust straight toward the heavens. Inside one of its side halls, a figure flickered and Su Lu appeared. Beside him, a man in a white scholar's robe sat at ease in a chair, leisurely sipping spiritual tea. When he saw Su Lu arrive, he did not rise but simply said in an unhurried tone, "You let those two go on purpose just now, didn't you? So you saw it?" Su Lu glanced at him coolly and answered without denying it. That cultivator in purple may wield the law of space, but with your strength, keeping them there should still have been possible. Why do such a thing? Those old fellows are not as easy to fool as Gong Shu Tian. If word reaches those above, I'm afraid it won't go well for you. That purple-robed cultivator is no ordinary person. Capturing him would have caused real trouble. Even if those above learn of it, they will not blame me, Su Lu replied. Oh? Who is he? The scholar-robed man asked, clearly surprised. Guangyuan Studio, Su Lu said and said no more. What? Are you certain? For the first time, the scholar-robed man seemed genuinely moved. I know what I am doing, Su Lu said. And what about Silver Fox? He is a notorious repeat offender listed on the Immortal Execution platform. Even if you did not want to keep the man in purple, there was no reason not to keep Silver Fox, was there? The man pressed. I said I know what I am doing. Since I did not keep Silver Fox, I had my reasons. You will understand in time. Su Lu's voice turned cold. The scholar-robed man gave a bitter smile and shook his head. Seeing that Su Lu had no intention of saying more, he did not ask further. In a secret chamber somewhere within Jukuin City, the world is getting more and more chaotic. After this, who will still dare come to the Jade Kuan Pavilion auction? I'm definitely reporting this matter afterward. If it comes to it, we'll simply cancel our cooperation with the Black Mountain Immortal Palace here. Otherwise, Baizhao Mountain's reputation will be ruined sooner or later, Master Jingyang said as he activated the secret chamber's restraints. Calm down, fellow Taoist Jingyang. You never liked being involved in the auction to begin with. From now on, just leave it alone and spend your days at leisure on Idle Cloud Mountain, Hanli said with a laugh. Though he looked relaxed, he was inwardly shaken. If he had fiercely contested that stalk of myriad soulgrass with the man in black during the auction, then the one being hunted by the Immortal Palace just now would likely have been him. Alas, even Idle Cloud Mountain is no longer what it once was, Master Jingyang sighed. Enough of these vexing matters. Let's have a look at that treasure you bought at such a great price first, Hanli said, changing the subject. Fellow Taoist Li, why do I feel more and more that you're not an alchemist at all, but a businessman? Master Jingyang asked, lifting a brow. Up on the mountain, who isn't a calculating businessman? Hanli replied with a smile. Ha you? Master Jingyang shook his head with a wry smile. As he spoke, he flipped his hand and took out an octagonal box no larger than a palm. Pressing a hand to the center, he produced a crisp click. The box split from the middle into 8 triangular petals that opened outward like a blooming flower. Standing nearby, Hanli's eyes lit with a faint blue glow deep within as he stared intently at every spirit pattern on the box and every subtle movement of Master Jingyang's hands. Master Jingyang placed the opened octagonal box upside down on the floor. He brought 2 fingers together and was just about to tap the box when his movement suddenly froze in midair. Hanli understood at once and smiled teasingly. What? Afraid I'll steal your secret technique for opening magical treasures? Even putting aside the fact that I can't make sense of what you're doing, even if I did understand it, I still couldn't make an identical spatial treasure like yours. Isn't that right? True enough. To be honest, this method isn't some profound art. It's just highly specialized. Even within Baizhao Mountain, not many people are willing to learn it. Even if you did learn it, you probably wouldn't have much use for it later, Master Jingyang said with a grin. A method like that? Wouldn't that make it little more than a chicken rib? Is there some story behind it? Hanli asked, raising a brow. Master Jingyang had already resumed tinkering with the octagonal box, but at those words he paused again. There's no harm in telling you. It isn't any secret. Earlier I said this piece that looks like beast bone was a spatial treasure, but that's not entirely accurate. More precisely, it should be called a grotto heaven treasure, he said after a moment of hesitation. A grotto heaven treasure? Hanli was startled, and at once thought of another treasure, the mountain and sea pearl. That pearl had originally been a sacred relic of the Kongyu race, a supreme treasure capable of containing mountains and seas within it. If this beast bone was such a treasure as well, then it truly would be priceless. Unfortunately, when he ascended to the Immortal Realm, he had been unable to bring it with him and had left it behind in the spirit realm. Seeing Hanli pause, Master Jingyang assumed he did not understand the origins of grotto heaven treasures and explained, unlike ordinary spatial treasures, the internal space of a grotto heaven treasure is usually much larger. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth can circulate on its own inside, so living things can survive there freely. It can be used to plant spirit herbs and raise spirit beasts. Hanli naturally knew the difference between the two perfectly well, but he still nodded as if he had understood. In the Immortal Realm, grotto heaven treasures are usually extremely expensive, though not exactly rare. If I used Baizhao Mountain's connections, buying one would be easy enough. But do you know why I care so much about this particular grotto heaven treasure? Fellow Taoist Li, Master Jingyang asked eagerly. How would I know? But seeing you willing to fight others for it without regard for Immortal Origin Stones, I can tell it must have quite a background, Hanli said quietly, shaking his head. Exactly. This piece of beast bone is called Fish Branch. It is one of the 4 grotto heaven treasures forged by our Baizhao Mountain's 3rd mountain lord, Xie Jinyun. The other 3 are Flower Branch, Bird Branch and Insect Branch. Together they are known as the 4 branches of flowers, birds, fish and insects. With the branch I've recovered now, only Flower Branch remains lost in the outside world, with no word of its whereabouts, Master Jingyang said, nodding. That's quite an elegant name. It seems your mountain lord must have been an interesting man, Hanli said with a smile. Our third mountain lord was the strangest in temperament of all Baizhou Mountain's lords, and aside from our founding ancestor, the one most revered by the sect's disciples. It is said that he had astonishing talent in the art of artifact forging. Even as an ordinary disciple, he was full of wild ideas, and the elders who taught the arts rebuked him for neglecting proper cultivation. Yet later he unexpectedly won the favor of the second mountain lord, who accepted him as a closed-door disciple and carefully nurtured him. In the end he became the great leader who revived Baizhou Mountain, Master Jingyang said, smiling as well. You've talked all this while, yet still haven't told me where that odd name came from. And how exactly is this fish branch supposed to be opened? Han Li asked after a thoughtful nod. As I said, our third mountain lord had a strange temperament. Who knows what he was thinking? Maybe he named them on a whim. Judging by your impatience, I'd better stop rambling and just open it, Master Jingyang said, glancing at Han Li. With that, he set the octagonal box on the ground and began drawing around it with joined fingers. Before long, a compact formation of dense, intricate lines appeared on the floor. He then took out the piece of beast bone and placed it atop the inverted octagonal box. So opening a grotto heaven treasure is this troublesome? Han Li frowned slightly. If it weren't troublesome, that ignorant gold immortal would have opened it long ago. Why would we have had the chance to snap it up? Master Jingyang replied irritably. A fair point, Han Li said with a nod. See this? The formation inscribed on the ground is called the 8 Origin Unlocking Formation. Some grotto heaven treasures become impossible to open once their original master dies. Only through this method can they be reopened. After that, you refine them once more, and then they can be opened and closed at will like a storage ring, Master Jingyang said, pointing at the formation. I see. My experience was lacking, Han Li said with a smile. All right, no more interruptions. What comes next is the crucial step, and you mustn't disturb me, Master Jingyang said, his expression growing solemn. Han Li immediately fell silent and stepped aside to watch. Master Jingyang's expression sharpened. His hands formed seals while his lips moved in a silent chant. By observing the motion of his lips and teeth, Han Li could vaguely tell what he was reciting, yet he could not make out how the incantation circulated through one's power. His brows drew together. A moment later, Master Jingyang pointed with both hands, and a streak of white light shot into the beast bone. At once, a brilliant silver light burst forth from the surface of the bone and spread across it, turning the entire piece white and translucent like snow. At the end of one knotted segment, a goldfish pattern the size of a coin emerged. Fellow Taoist Li, wait a moment. Once I've refined it, I'll open it for you, Master Jingyang said, lifting the fish branch into his hand. Han Li was still pondering the operation of the art and only nodded without speaking. Master Jingyang then sat down cross-legged, enclosed the jade bone in his palms, and began refining it. Roughly 3 hours later, he finally rose, drenched in sweat and clearly having expended a great deal. Haha, fellow Taoist Li, now comes the moment when flowers bloom and fruit ripens, when we sit and collect our share, he said. Though his face was pale, his eyes shone with delight. Then let's see how lucky we are, Han Li said, rubbing his hands together like an eager miser. Master Jingyang drew a hand across the fish branch. The jade bone shuddered with light and turned insubstantial and transparent. The brilliant silver radiance it emitted formed a luminous doorway over 10 feet tall. Within the doorway, one could vaguely see a patch of green, and a soft breeze drifted out from within. Please, fellow Taoist Li, Master Jingyang said with a smile, stepping into the light door first and vanishing inside. Han Li gazed at the door for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, then followed close behind. The moment he stepped through, his vision flared bright. The next instant, he appeared above a vast expanse of rippling waters, and a breath of fresh air rushed at him. He inhaled deeply and felt his spirits lift at once. Then he steadied himself and looked around. The body of water below stretched several dozen li wide, already the size of a small lake. Farther out, mist shrouded everything. It was impossible to tell where it led, or whether it marked the very edge of the space. At the center of the lake was a round little island. Thick woods grew over it, birds chirped among the trees, and in the middle stood an elegant courtyard of white walls and black tiles. Han Li and Master Jingyang hovered above the water and looked down. Ripples spread across the surface, and beneath them swam plump golden carp, one after another. From time to time they spat strings of tiny bubbles and seemed delighted beyond measure. I never imagined the spiritual energy in this grotto heaven would be so abundant, Han Li said with admiration. Indeed. It's no worse than some of the blessed lands of sex in the Immortal Realm. Look at this lake. There must be at least 2 spiritual springs in it. As the stories say, the third mountain lord truly was far beyond the likes of a mediocrity like me. Shameful, shameful indeed, Master Jingyang said. Unable to help himself, he pulled out his wine gourd, took a great swig, then let out a long breath. Why do you keep saying as the stories say, fellow Taoist Jingyang? Which generation of mountain lord currently leads your sect? Han Li asked as he admired the refreshing scenery around them. Heh, the third mountain lord has indeed already become legend. The one currently in charge is the 5th mountain lord. Time flies and people and things alike are no longer what they once were, Master Jingyang said with a sigh. As they spoke, the two skimmed low across the water and soon reached the small island in the middle of the lake. The moment they set foot on it, the fragrance of flowers and the songs of birds came drifting through the woods. Following the stone path into the forest, they quickly arrived before the courtyard gate. To the front left of the courtyard lay a small spiritual field, enclosed within a pale violet light barrier. Inside grew many immortal herbs and spirit plants of varied forms, all brimming with spiritual energy. Master Jingyang's eyes brightened slightly. He stepped forward, waved a hand, and in a few strokes opened the restriction that had evidently gone untended and unrepaired for who knew how many years. Fellow Taoist Li, you're an alchemist. You should recognize everything growing here, shouldn't you? He said, sweeping his gaze around before turning back to Han Li. Han Li entered the garden and carefully examined the not particularly large field, his heart stirring. It's impossible to say how long this fish branch jade bone remained sealed, but the herbs here are nearly all over 100,000 years old. These few 9-leaf cornels in particular, and that patch of ink fragrance grass, their medicinal properties have almost reached perfect maturity. They're incredibly precious, Han Li said, pointing into the field. Excellent eye indeed. As agreed before, you may choose 1/3 of the herbs first. If that still isn't enough, I can convert the rest into Immortal Origin Stones and sell them to you. We may as well count it as repaying part of what I owe you in advance, Master Jingyang said with a hearty laugh. Could it be that when you borrowed money from me, fellow Taoist Jingyang, you had already thought of using the contents of this grotto heaven treasure to repay me? As expected of a businessman from a sect like Baizhou Mountain. Your foresight truly commands admiration, Han Li said, giving him a thumbs up. You wrong me there. The real reason I spent so much to buy this fish branch jade bone lies more in its connection to the sect's past. As for what might be inside, it's no different from mortals gambling on stones, pure luck. After all, I can't know whether this thing passed through someone else's hands during all these years, Master Jingyang said, waving dismissively. Heh, I can't let you repay this favor so easily. As we agreed earlier, I'll only take 1/3 of the herbs. As for the Immortal Origin Stones you owe me, you can pay them back slowly in the future, Han Li said with a smile. With that, he began selecting from the field and put 1/3 of the herbs into his possession. Meanwhile, Master Jingyang had already opened the restriction on the courtyard gate. Yet he did not enter alone. Instead, he stood outside, drinking wine and admiring the scenery, in no hurry at all. Once Han Li had finished collecting his share and returned, the two of them crossed the threshold together and entered the courtyard. Unlike the immortal residences Han Li usually saw, this one was laid out more like the home of an ordinary mortal. A little over 10 paces inside stood a white screen wall. Painted on it were a black carp and a red carp, biting each other's tails to form a circular doublefish ring. Across its surface shimmered a layer of faint, translucent white light. A flash of blue lit deep within Han Li's eyes. He saw that beneath the screen wall rose a layer of white mist too fine for ordinary sight to detect. Dense spiritual energy was converging and dispersing there. He guessed that this spot was the true core of the entire Grotto Heaven Treasures operation. Passing around the screen wall, the two entered the first courtyard. Looking to either side, they saw puppets scattered along the corridors, their spirit cores long depleted, lying in disordered heaps across the ground. Master Jingyang stepped forward, crouched to examine them for a while, then shook his head in disappointment. "What is it, fellow Taoist Jingyang?" Han Li asked. "These puppets were not made by the third mountain lord. I don't know who left them here. Their workmanship is rather ingenious, but now they're nothing more than scraps of broken metal," Master Jingyang said. "As you said earlier, no one knows how many years this fish branch has circulated. Its original master may have changed more than once. How could everything possibly remain untouched?" Han Li said with a smile as his gaze swept over the puppets. "That's true enough," Master Jingyang said, nodding and no longer dwelling on it. The two continued inward through the courtyards, inspecting every room in all three sections. They discovered that the previous owner of this grotto heaven treasure had surprisingly been an avid collector of famous mortal paintings. Many of them were masterpieces by painters celebrated for ages in the mortal world. There were even famous calligraphic works by great masters. Hanging in the main hall was a scroll titled Morning Script, written over 100,000 years ago in Immortal Kingdom within the Golden Source Immortal Domain by a calligraphy master in honor of his ancestors. The force and speed of its brushwork shifted with extraordinary richness. Dry and wet ink intermingled. The script itself was unconstrained by any single style, like an ink dragon darting through the air. It was so free and effortless that it even carried a hint of the charm of immortal talismans. Though Han Li was no connoisseur in such matters, he nevertheless found himself approving of the former owner's taste. Fortunately, aside from these mortal treasures, there was also a secret chamber inside the Grotto Heaven treasure devoted to storing valuables. It contained a number of immortal treasures, medicinal pills, and spiritual materials. After a cursory examination, Han Li found that these treasures were all of rather high grade. Most were suitable for Tai cultivators. Among them, the most precious were a red-feathered fire fan containing the power of the law of fire, and a wooden ruler containing the power of the law of time. No one knew what kind of spirit bird's fiery plumes had been used to make the former, but the law of fire within it was astonishingly intense. With the slightest activation, a vague flaming phantom would shoot forth, easily melting ordinary gold immortal treasures into liquid. The latter was green throughout and smooth as jade. Its surface was engraved with dense measuring marks, and at its tail end in golden seal script were the small words, "An inch of time, an inch of gold." Since it had not been refined, there was no way to tell what it did. "Fellow Taoist Li, didn't you show a special fondness at the auction for treasures containing the law of time? Of these two treasures, I think the wooden ruler suits you better. Let me keep this red feather fire fan. I may be a bit lazy in daily life, but I am still an artifact refiner, and this fan would be a fine helper when I forge," Master Jingyang said, his gaze fixed on the fan, unable to hide his affection for it. "Fellow Taoist Jingyang, I was only willing to spend so much on that broken time pot because it had a special use. This wooden ruler may be of even higher grade, but it isn't of much use to me. On the other hand, this red feather fire fan would be equally useful to me for pill refinement," Han Li replied with a faint frown and a troubled expression. Master Jingyang seemed to fall into a dilemma as well. After hesitating for a long while, he finally said, "Fellow Taoist Li, as long as you do not choose this fire fan, then after you've taken your full 1/3 share, you may choose 3 additional items from what remains. What do you say?" "Well, since that is the case, I can hardly forcefully take what you love." "Very well, let us do as you suggest," Han Li said slowly after seeming to ponder it for a moment. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist Li," Master Jingyang said at once, delight spreading across his face. Afterward, Han Li first stored the green wooden ruler in his storage bracelet, then collected the rest of his allotted share. Only once all this was done did Master Jingyang reopen the light door of the Grotto Heaven treasure, and the two exited one after the other. Back in the secret chamber, Master Jingyang looked Han Li up and down with a smile, then suddenly said, "Fellow Taoist Li, it is rare for two people to get along as well as we do. I have an improper request, though I wonder whether I should say it. Surely you are not about to suggest again that I become an executive elder at your Baizhou Mountain?" Han Li asked with a smile. "Haha, indeed. This is a formal invitation. Fellow Taoist Li's attainments on the path of alchemy are far from shallow. If you were to join Baizhou Mountain, your talents could truly flourish. And for our sect, gaining your support would be a blessing as well, Master Jingyang said seriously. Have you forgotten? I am still plagued by the baleful decline tribulation. My future is perilous and uncertain. What grand prospects could I possibly pursue? Han Li said with a bitter smile. But have you not already obtained the Xuanji crystal this time? Once you refine that pill, driving out the baleful qi should not be a problem. At that point, these troubles will be gone, Master Jingyang said. Then I shall borrow your auspicious words. For the next stretch of time I'll be entering seclusion to refine pills, and I still have many preparations to make. I won't trouble you further, Han Li said with a smile. Very well. The auction still has some final matters to settle, so I must see to them. Forgive me for not escorting you out. When your pill refinement succeeds and the baleful qi is expelled, I shall unseal a jar of green fermented wine and celebrate for you, Master Jingyang said, clasping his fists lightly. Farewell, Han Li replied in kind. After the two parted, Han Li left the estate and saw that the aftermath of the earlier disturbance in Juquan's inner city had already fully subsided. The city remained as lively as ever. He did not linger. He left Juquan City at once and returned to Wild Crane Valley on Idle Cloud Mountain. Back in his cave residence, Han Li first checked on Ma Guang. Seeing that he was still in seclusion cultivating and that nothing unusual had occurred, Han Li returned to the inner chamber, came to the desk, took out paper and brush and began drawing. As the brush moved, fine lines gradually appeared, taking shape as a diagram of an octagonal box, intricate and mysterious in design. After finishing one frontal view, Han Li examined it briefly and set it aside, then took out another sheet and continued drawing. Before long, 7 or 8 drawings of the box from different angles lay spread across the desktop. Han Li swept his gaze over them, nodded in satisfaction, and rubbed at his aching brow with 2 fingers. Soon after, he took out another sheet of paper and began drawing the formation Master Jingyang had inscribed on the ground. HM? Could this be the 8 origin unlocking formation? A voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Fellow Taoists, yeah, do you recognize these diagrams? Han Li asked without stopping his hand. There was no need to turn around. He knew the newcomer was Taoist Xie. A trace of confusion also flashed through Taoist Xie's eyes, as though he himself did not know why that name had come to mind. I'm not sure why, but the moment I saw these diagrams I remembered it naturally, he said after a moment's hesitation. Oh? Could it be part of the memories your former master sealed within you suddenly awakened? Han Li asked. I don't know, Taoist Xie said, shaking his head. He stepped forward, picked up the earlier diagrams, and studied them carefully for a while. Then he suddenly said, something here is wrong. The crossing point of these formation lines is twisted slightly. It would affect the actual function. You know how to make this thing? Han Li asked at once, delight rising in his heart. As long as there are materials I can make it, Taoist Xie answered without the slightest hesitation, nodding. With that, he took the brush from Han Li's hand and began writing stroke by stroke on the paper. A short while later he handed Han Li a long list of materials and said, once everything on this list is prepared, I can make the 8 origin key. The 8 origin key. Han Li murmured the words as his eyes swept over the list of materials. No wonder Master Jingyang had not worried about him learning the 8 origin unlocking formation. Without knowing the proper material ratios, he would not even be able to create the key itself. But because of that, Han Li found it even stranger. Why did Taoist Xie know all this? From Taoist Xie's earlier expression, however, it was clear that he himself seemed equally puzzled. This 8 origin unlocking formation appears useful only for certain special grotto heaven treasures. May I ask what it is that fellow Taoist Han intends to open? Taoist Xie suddenly asked. Han Li pondered briefly, then turned his hand over and took out the tailbone he had obtained from the giant rat. As he handed it to Taoist Xie, Han Li kept his eyes fixed on the man's expression, hoping to catch some subtle change. But Taoist Xie only frowned slightly in puzzlement and took it. Do you recognize this thing, fellow Taoist Xie? Han Li asked directly. If you had not told me beforehand, I would not have been able to tell this was a grotto heaven treasure, Taoist Xie said after looking at it for a while. Then he handed it back and shook his head. If I had not seen something at the auction with precisely the same aura, I would never have realized it was a grotto heaven treasure either. Once I have gathered these materials, I'll have to trouble you to help refine it, Hanli said, nodding. It's no trouble, Dao Xie replied. Afterward, Hanli asked a number of questions about the materials for the 8 origin key, then hurried out of the cave residence and made another trip to Jukuan City. More than 2 months later, on the floor of Han Li's cave residence, a small formation had already been fully inscribed. Dao Xie held an octagonal box in his hands. With a sharp click, he opened it and placed it upside down at the center of the formation. Fellow Daoist Han, place the grotto heaven treasure on top, Dao Xie said, glancing back at Han Li. Han Li flicked his wrist, took out the tailbone, and set it atop the inverted box. The unlocking incantation. Before Han Li could finish, Dao Xie said, knowing only the incantation is of little meaning. It must be matched with the circulation of one's internal magic power. Since fellow Dao Xie says that, I assume you know how the art is circulated? Han Li said with a smile. Leave it to me, Dao Xie said, nodding. With that, Dao Xie formed hand seals and began silently chanting, his lips moving continuously. The incantation he recited was exactly the same as the one Master Jingyang had used. A moment later, he pointed with both hands, and a streak of white light shot into the beast bone. The surface of the tailbone first flashed with an emerald light. Then it burst with dazzling silver radiance, which spread over the bone like flowing water, turning the entire tailbone white and translucent like snow. At the very end of the bone, a flower-shaped pattern the size of a coin then appeared. Seeing this, Han Li's heart stirred slightly. As he had suspected, this giant rat tailbone was indeed one of the 4 grotto heaven treasures forged by Baizhao Mountain's 3rd mountain lord, one of the flowers, birds, fish, and insects, flower branch. This item has already been unsealed. Once you refine it slightly, fellow Daoist Han, you will be able to open it, Dao Xie said, picking up the tailbone and returning it to Han Li. Many thanks, Han Li said, nodding. After accepting the flower branch, he examined it for a moment, then sat down cross-legged, enclosed the jade bone in his palms and began refining it. About 2 hours later, Han Li's eyes flew open. He raised a hand to wipe the sweat from his brow and stood up. The delight in his eyes was impossible to hide. After glancing at Dao Xie, he gently drew a hand across the flower branch. The jade bone trembled with light and began to turn insubstantial and transparent. The brilliant silver radiance it emitted then formed a light door over 10 feet high. Fellow Dao Xie, come with me and let us see what lies within this grotto heaven treasure, Han Li said with a smile. With that, he stepped into the silver light door first. Dao Xie stood before the doorway and was just about to step in when his body paused ever so slightly. The next instant he recovered and stepped through, vanishing from sight. Inside the light door, Han Li found himself standing on a broad stretch of grassland. His gaze swept ahead, and at the end of the grassland he saw a dense forest. Faint smoke rose among the trees, rendering everything hazy and indistinct. Han Li did not rush into the forest at once. Instead, he first flew once around the edge of the grotto heaven. The sky within was not especially high, no more than 10,000 zhang. Beyond that rose a thick spatial barrier that blocked further ascent. The same was true of the surrounding boundaries, confining the entire grotto heaven within a fixed range. After completing one circuit, Han Li found that compared with Master Jingyang's fish branch, this flower branch contained a significantly larger area, though the density of the spiritual energy within was roughly the same. Once the inspection was over, he and Dao Xie descended into the forest. The moment he entered, Han Li clearly sensed a faint baleful aura lingering throughout. Across the ground before him ran a white path, laid out in strange patterns and winding deeper into the forest. The source of that baleful aura seemed to come from it. Han Li could not help frowning slightly as he bent down to inspect it more closely. After a while, he realized that the white path had not been paved with white stone or fine jade at all, but rather with bones, human and beast bones of all sizes and shapes. No wonder the giant rat corpse was steeped in such heavy baleful qi. It seems it had this sort of taste as well, Han Li sighed. Following the white bone path inward, the baleful aura in the woods gradually lessened. All along both sides of the road appeared countless strange flowers and herbs, Some Hanli recognized and many he had never seen before. All looked to have been growing for a very long time. Hanli did not stop to identify or gather them. He continued along the path until he reached a grove of purple bamboo only a few hundred zhang across. Purple mist rose within the grove, and spiritual energy drifted in dense clouds. Through it, one could vaguely make out a two-story pavilion. There was no longer even the slightest trace of baleful qi here. The place felt serene and ethereal, truly like the residence of an immortal. Blue light flashed in Hanli's eyes as he carefully inspected the bamboo grove. Seeing no restrictions within it, he stepped inside. After walking several hundred paces, the two came upon a fenced courtyard. Pushing open the gate, they saw a small pond in the center of the yard. Purple mist rolled and swirled above it, and in the middle grew clusters of violet gold lotuses. It seems the core of this grotto heaven treasure lies in this pond and in these violet gold lotuses, Hanli said thoughtfully as he stood at the pond's edge. Indeed. The foundation of this grotto heaven is right here, Donhua said, nodding in agreement. The two crossed a purple bamboo arched bridge that spanned the pond and arrived before the two-story pavilion on the opposite side. The entire structure was made of purple bamboo as well. Its base seemed almost planted into the earth itself, and one could vaguely see pale violet roots spreading beneath it. A dim purple light veiled the outer surface of the building, clearly marking the presence of restrictions. This purple bamboo pavilion was built quite cleverly. It borrows the power of the violet gold lotuses in the pond and merges part of itself with their root system. If one were to forcefully break the restriction, the doors might open, but the foundation of this grotto heaven would certainly be damaged, Hanli said, the blue light fading from his eyes as he turned to Donhua. That is no problem. With a slight adjustment to the 9 spirits seizing truth art, the pavilion's restriction can be opened without harming the violet gold lotuses, Donhua replied. You make it sound so easy, fellow Donhua. Since you seem completely confident, I'll have to trouble you once again, Hanli said with a smile. Donhua did not refuse. He merely nodded in silence and began circulating his art to break the restriction.